When I think about the Civil War, I think of battles, violence, and bloodshed, and screaming children and crying wives. So when we had to pick an idea to film this project, we wanted to choose Vicksburg or Gettysburg, the Battle of Antietam, or something crazy. But no, we chose something just 20 minutes down the road. The surrender of Bennett Place. And now, we're here.
Yeah, all us out, dude.
So you're Diane.
My name's Diane. I'm the chief historian here at Bennett Place.
Okay, great. We'd like to ask you some questions about
Absolutely.
the Bennett Place surrender.
Sure.
And the first one is, can you explain a brief summary of the context of the Bennett Place surrender?
Absolutely. Bennett Place was first the home of James and Nancy Bennett. They would move here 1846. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Their eldest son, Lorenzo, would enlist in the Confederate Army. Eliza, their daughter, would marry Robert Duke. He would also enlist. Both Lorenzo and Robert would die serving in the Confederate Army. Their youngest son, Alfonso, we're not really sure too much about him. We know that he will pass away in the spring of 1863.
Okay.
So as the Civil War comes to an end in April of 1865, we believe that only James, Nancy, and Eliza were here at the house. This just happened to be sort of in between where the two armies were at this time. Of course, we have the Federal Army under General Sherman, who is moving up through the Carolinas, will enter into North Carolina the early part of March. General Johnston, who has been brought back into command of the Confederate forces, will go up against him at Bentonville. They will engage in battle for several days. At the conclusion of about 3 days, General Johnston will break away and move his forces further west.
Okay.
He will be in and around the Raleigh area about the middle of April when he gets the official word that Lee had surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. Lee will surrender on the 9th of April officially. And Johnston will meet with President Davis, who's now in Greensboro, to basically request his ability to meet with Sherman to surrender his army to end the war. And this will occur between the 17th of April and the 26th. There's several communications back and forth between Johnston and Sherman. Ultimately, what happens is, while General Johnston is waiting for a response from General Sherman, he will move into Hillsborough, where he will stay at the Dixon Farm. General Sherman and the Federal Army has now moved into Raleigh, and there is a road that connects pretty much the two. There's a train station and a road, let's put it that way. Sherman will come in from Raleigh into Durham Station, and from there he will get on a horse and he will take the Hillsborough Road, which is the road that runs in front of our farm today.
Right.
General Johnston will leave Hillsborough, and he will take the same road heading from Hillsborough, and he is to meet with General Sherman somewhere in the area. I'm not really sure exactly where, but it is close to around the house of James and Nancy Bennett that Johnston will meet with Sherman. Of course, Sherman has a telegram announcing the death of Abraham Lincoln with him, and he needs to speak with Johnston in private. Of course, the negotiations that these two generals need to do is not for everybody to hear, so they will ask James and Nancy if they can use the parlor of their house.
Okay.
The family will then move into the kitchen house, and the negotiations will take place in the parlor.
Okay, so you would say that the reason that the Bennett Place was used was just out of convenience?
Out of convenience. It was a house that was located along the Hillsborough Road. Absolutely.
What exactly was?
It's, yeah, this is a very interesting phenomenon that happens. General Sherman, along with Grant, will meet with President Lincoln in March to have a brief meeting on the River Queen to discuss the end of the war, see how things are going. Sherman and Grant are Lincoln's 2 biggest generals, and of course he's going to meet with them, and he's basically going to tell these guys, get it done. Quickly get it done. Right. So Lincoln's plans for what's going to happen at the end of the war after it is over really wanted to extend as much peace to the Confederate Army as possible, because only 4 years before we were a united nation.
Okay.
But when Lincoln is assassinated, those plans, of course, died with.
Yeah.
Sherman feels that maybe that would have been what Lincoln wanted, so he will allow a little bit more leniency in the surrender. He will go beyond what is called a military surrender.
Right.
He will kind of sort of delve into a little bit more of the politics.
So he was trying to carry on Lincoln's ideal state?
Yes, I mean, he pretty much felt that that's what he always basically said when he defended himself and his actions, was he felt that that was what Lincoln would have wanted. He was working in Lincoln's best interest.
Right, okay.
So, yes, he will catch a lot of Secretary of War under Abraham Lincoln, a very good friend of Lincoln. And because of Sherman stepping over his bounds as far as aggravating, because Sherman dealt with things that he did not have the authority to do.
Okay.
But Sherman defended himself, thinking that what he was doing was what Lincoln would have wanted. That was what he defended himself. That is why this surrender is so very different than the one at Appomattox Courthouse, in that there were two negotiations, two documents that were signed here. The first one was on the 18th, which was the one that Stanton and Andrew Johnston refused to sign, but President Davis signed it because he wanted those terms.
Yeah.
And that is why Grant came down to Raleigh to meet with Sherman and let him know that the terms were not accepted and that he would need to meet with General Johnston again. And that is why the 26th of April was the third and the final meeting between these two, and when the final document, the final surrender document is signed.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Okay?
Thanks,
Say a
Bennett.
deal. As Sherman's army marches up from Savannah, after it marches to Atlanta, back up to North Carolina.
Okay.
Now, the three houses here are all replicas. They're not original.
Oh, okay.
In 1921, this one burned down because some vagrants who got off the railroad came in and tried to warm up.
Headed down south to the land of the pines. I'm thumbing my way to North Carolina, staring up the road and pray to God I see headlights. I made it down the coast in 17 hours, picking me a bouquet of dogwood flowers, and I'm hoping for Raleigh I can see my baby tonight.